Silkworm. Every bite is crammed full of action. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
Is that bite with like a Y?
Yeah, with a Y.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
The rest of the back of the box was all just quotes, so I wasn't really sure, like, what, I'm not going to quote some magazine, right? So instead I took, I guess, what would be a quote from somebody, but just the only thing I could read is a back of the box. Sometimes the back of the box isn't so obvious, people.
It's weird to call it, like, to talk about bites on the back of the box, because I know it's a video game, but it's not like a video game about being a video game.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. Like, it's not like a selling point that this is a digital product.
Right.
I mean, maybe it's
not
because,
like a Tron game or something.
It is about, like, an artificial intelligence, but it's very, very loosely about that.
I didn't even know it was about that, I'll be honest.
You pressed start really quick then.
I pressed start immediately, yeah. That's what I'm known for. But like, it would be like if a movie, if Shawshank Redemption was like every reel of film, it's like this is a movie.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. Even if they meant that like every byte in the code is full of action, right? It's like, well, that's not true because there's loading screens and there's a bonus tally menu and there's a part where you got to select whether you want to be a helicopter or a jeep or a tank.
It's a jeep.
Oh, it is a jeep. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I was trying to make it sound more badass than it was. So we'll start there then. Helicopter or jeep?
Helicopter.
My gut would say helicopter for sure.
Jeep cool too.
Yeah, and there's actually some things the jeep can do that surprised me that the helicopter can't do, like take down certain enemies really easily that I had a really hard time with the helicopter.
Well, real quick, what are we talking about right now? Like, but why do we say Jeep helicopter good, bad?
Well, no, I just thought that we should just be as vague as possible, and that was the goal of our show. It seems like for the last 300-something episodes, we've been really nondescript about all these things, so why start now?
We try.
I know. Okay, so yes, there is a choice of basically, before you start any of the game, you have a choice between your vehicle. And so the helicopter in this game, first off, this game is a side-scrolling shoot 'em up. If you can believe that, with the vehicle side, it's basically no matter what you do, it's not like the vehicle unlocks certain missions and the helicopter is a different set of missions. No, it's the same thing. You're just choosing whether you want to be in a flying vehicle or a ground vehicle, which each have their different like pros and cons, right? The helicopter obviously has air maneuverability and can basically attack all airborne targets a lot easier. However, it can only really shoot in like a straightforward direction and a like, is that 45 degrees? What do we call it?
I'd say it's a good 45 degrees down.
Okay, it felt like even less than 45.
Maybe 30 degrees.
Yeah.
It's made more complicated because you're always also firing straight forward and 45 degrees down. Then you tilt 30 degrees down, so you're still firing 30 degrees and then like 30 plus 45 degrees. Obviously, I should be able to do that math in my head very easily, but I didn't. But yeah, so it's more complicated than that too.
Right, and that exists, of course. You had to, in order to tilt, you have to press the A button. The B button is something that you really should just hold down because there's no penalty and you can just constantly keep shooting. That exists because, as I mentioned, the levels don't change. So there are some ground enemies, and so in order to perfect the shot at them, you're going to want to potentially tilt the helicopter in a way where you can shoot at the ground more clearly. If you don't do the helicopter, though, then you have the Jeep. And the Jeep has, to make up for its land capabilities, where it basically is stuck at the bottom of the screen.
You can jump, though.
Yeah, you can jump, but keep in mind, all the enemies, I would say, like, 75% of the enemies that you will deal on any particular level exist in the air. So you now have to take them on from the ground via a like turret that you can control in different arcs. So it's not like something that freely moves, but it moves in different positions, but it moves in a lot more positions than the helicopter. So whereas the helicopter only had the ability to tilt just a little bit forward to shoot on the ground, the Jeep can make it this way you can shoot behind you, a little bit in an arc behind you, fully straight up, fully in a little arc ahead of you, and then fully straight ahead of you. So you get a lot of different advantage points there. And to wrap up what we were saying about preference, I'm surprised to hear the helicopter from you guys, because I actually thought the Jeep was pretty op in this game. I mean, you can basically dodge a lot of enemies by the nature of being on the ground, and then you have the ability to control your shot in such a fluid manner that you never have to really worry about where your position is on the map, as long as you can arc it the shot.
I agree with that, and I also think that it's at least a unique perspective to be in the Jeep. But if we're just talking about how straightforward it is, like how it's much more intuitive to play as the helicopter, because it is just so like everything that we've played before, and that's actually not like a great thing. I don't think that's a great thing, because it just means that it's just how you do a shmup, and not something new. The Jeep is something new. It's just a little harder to get your head around.
Yeah, and I was also coming at it more from a standpoint of like 9-year-old Joe, and if I'm playing like multiplayer, what am I taking? And like, yeah, you want to be the one that can fly, because it's just in my brain cooler. But yeah, I do think that, honestly, I think what it comes down to, if you like really look at it for me, is that I think that they kind of balance nicely. So like I do think that they both, there's an argument to be made for both of them.
And I think that the way that we've been talking about it this far is sort of beating around the bush of this game, in that I think this is one of the first shmups that we've played that like the main way that I think you're supposed to experience it is in multiplayer. Like one person playing as the helicopter, one person playing as the Jeep, and I think I didn't have a friend to do this. That seems like it'd be pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, I also didn't play multiplayer, and I kind of wish I had, but it even feels, to the extent that like single player seems to not have adjusted itself to be a single player game. Not that it's bad as a single player game, but it just feels like there are things in place that like are designed for the multiplayer element that is not edited for the single player.
Right. There's no change in the cooperative mode. To Sean's point, it is just suggested that for the complete experience, 2 players would play where one controls the helicopter and one controls the Jeep, and they are simultaneous. It's not, when the helicopter loses its life, you restart the stage with player 2 now as the Jeep. They happen all at the same time, and because nothing ever changes, it's the exact same layout as if you were playing handicapped alone. What's interesting about that is, I don't know, like, not that it would be possible with the NES controller to control both, but to think about modern games, just to go to a recent favorite example of like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, if you made it so that like, you need 2 other friends to be the other party members. Like, we can't make it so that you control Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith all at once, right? Like, you need to have a player logged into controller number 2 in order to control Tifa. It's like, that's what this feels like on a NES scale. It feels like I'm not able to get the actual full game, and I don't think there's another genre where that's true on the NES. Like, there's no platformer example of that where like the real game is playing with 2 Mega Mans at once, right? Like, that hasn't happened yet on the NES, and so this is a weird example where you're missing features by just not having friends. Now, of course, everybody who owned an NES would have plenty of friends in the neighborhood because they own an NES. Naturally, people just want to come over your house and play your games, but that still doesn't change that the single-player experience is one that feels a little restrictive. And by that, I mean it truly restrictive in the sense of the way the levels are designed. There are definitely enemies that are preferred to be with the Jeep, and there are enemies that are preferred to be taken up against with the helicopter. And I think for the boss battles, it's much easier to say like, oh, it's the helicopter 100%. Like it just makes hitting the glowing parts of the boss fight so much easier when you're in something that can maneuver across the entire screen. But there are certain moments where it's nice to not have to worry about being hit by any enemies on the ground other than the landmines and stationary objects that remain on the bottom of the screen. Guys, help me out here. Is there a justification for stripping out, or rather, is it not stripping out and it's just like, hey, this is just some cool bonus perk where you can actually play as both? Like, you totally would want to play Super Mario Brothers with Mario and Luigi at the same time.
Now, when you say that, do you mean like one person controlling both of them at the same time?
No, I meant you know, like the way that it's here in Silkworm. Like they should have made it so that, you know, it's not one and then the other. It's that Mario and Luigi should both be on the screen at the same time, and that, you know, that's how it should always be, and that it's not restrictive here.
I think what's weird about this game is that the more unique way to play it, which is as the Jeep, if that were the only way to play this game, I would be completely befuddled by the design decision going into it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's a shmup where you can't go up and down, and there's all of this real estate like above you that just isn't being used properly, and you can do this weird jump, and you can just sort of affect the angle at which you shoot. Like, this is super stupid. And then on the other side, you just have the helicopter, which operates pretty much like every other shmup. I wouldn't say that playing this single player with either of them is like a bad experience. It's just it feels incomplete, and I think that if it were either just one or the other, it would be just another like bargain bin thing. And even together, like this game really only shines when you're playing in multiplayer, because I mean, I'm not saying that from experience. I'm saying that from the the theory of it, because otherwise it is just half of an experience. I'm just rambling.
No, I see it the same way. I mean, I bargain bin, I think, is a great way to put it. Like, that's what this feels like playing in single player. It feels like a good bargain bin game, I guess, but like, it's not anything I would write home about. And also, having not played 2-player, I'm very interested. I want to play this in 2-player because it feels like, alone, each of these things are kind of lacking. I mean, the helicopter is just such a basic shmup. There's not even like really very good power ups. There's like two, that I got.
I think there's just two power ups.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, the Jeep is cool, but it is clearly like not designed to be driving a Jeep game alone. But putting them together, I think that is cool because it's not only is it co-op like Contra or something, but it's asymmetrical, which makes it It feels like you have to really work together. There are these enemies that I was facing. They show up all the time. They form out of like 5 smaller things into this like big ship, and it's like really hard to take one down with the helicopter. But when you do, that's how you get like that's like the biggest way to get power ups, if not the only way to get power ups. I'm not sure, but.
I think that from what I remember, that is the only thing that drops power-ups. Yeah,
that snake helicopter thing.
Yeah. But the Jeep takes that thing down in like 2 hits. And that's just one example of kind of the what I imagine would be a lot of situations where you have to be kind of yelling at each other like, hey, get that thing, I'm going to go up here. You know, you have the advantage of the more maneuverability with the helicopter and the advantage of maybe some better firepower, I guess, with the Jeep, and you're maybe in less danger with the Jeep. So you have to really work together and communicate. And it almost reminds me of this is only in the feeling of it reminds me of like A Way Out, if anyone's played that. Or
no, absolutely.
That came out after that.
It Takes Two.
It Takes Two, yeah, which I've never played all the way through, but it's like it's designed to be a co-op game, and it's not just you're both doing the same thing. There's like you have to do. I think It Takes Two even more so than A Way Out, but both of them really. And yeah, it's like the little bit of the seed of that kind of idea.
Yeah,
I think you're giving it a lot of credit, though.
I mean,
yeah, sure,
absolutely.
that is definitely
Absolutely.
an overstatement, but I did feel a similar thing, that this is a game like a Kane and Lynch or an Army of Two, if we're going to go back like a couple generations, or even to the modern gamer, something like Lethal Company or Among Us, where it's not so much like you where it's not so much like, oh, it's a multiplayer game, you need to play this multiplayer, but or like it's just a co-op game, you need to play this co-op. It's just a game that bots don't work in, and so it's a game that was designed for multiplayer but can't be really that well adapted for single player. Like even something as simple as Unreal Tournament could have bots and you could still have something to do. Where this is a multiplayer game that you kind of need two people to really experience.
I think that's interesting because I'm not sure I have the same takeaway, but I'm not disputing the claim there either. I guess what I'm thinking is like, for it to truly be like, oh, the cooperative one is the real one, other than the fact that it intends for you to be able to control both at the same time, is that it would actually require moments where like the Jeep and the helicopter work in tandem in a way that isn't just, well, now you can clear enemies off the screen faster. Because remember, that's all this game is
Sure.
like, it gives you even a way to shoot enemies so quickly that you basically just hold down the B button, and it's for the first time ever, I'm like, is autofire a bad thing just because of how like simplified it makes an already pretty simple game when you're playing it single player? When you're playing it with two, it's like now, because of the way that they made it that you could play it single player with either or, they've removed any of those cool possibilities of like, man, if the Jeep and the helicopter are working together, then like the helicopter's got to squeeze through this space on the upper level and dock here to do something, to turn on something so the Jeep's gate can open up and go through the garage, right? Like,
Sure,
there's nothing
right.
like that.
You're right. It's not like truly it's not truly you need to. I guess that was an overstatement on my end, but obviously the experience is truly lackluster compared to if you're playing with another person. And I guess that sort of takes away my examples where, yeah, you can play those games single player, it's just gonna suck. I guess this falls more into that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it more also as like you of course can play this game single player and it functions fine, but it's just the star of the show is multiplayer. How big of a star it is TBD, but it was just the first example that I remember seeing of kind of an asymmetrical co-op game.
I guess the only other ones that we've seen, and again, you're right with co-op that this doesn't count for that, but obviously playing Jeopardy alone is going to be a different experience than playing Jeopardy with people. But like these are just like, garbage bag game show games.
Yeah. Well, Duck Hunt had some asymmetrical, not co-op, that nobody ever knew about, as far as I know.
Right. So what do you think about like I don't know, broader topics like difficulty progression or replay value? Like, was the game building on anything here, or does it feel like it's just the background changes between levels? I was surprised that throughout most of the game, you can fight back with almost all of the missile projectiles, especially for some of the bosses. That was like nice to be able to like fire those things away rather than forcibly dodge them. I think it does provide some light spins on like what we've seen in shmups, even if it is just a pretty standard a shmup. But the level to level really did just feel like a palette swap for me. Not even like, yes, the backgrounds are more intricate, but the locations even kind of don't really change in extreme ways where like it makes any sense of like, oh, we're getting somewhere. Like it just kind of is taking you to different landscapes, and then all of a sudden you're in a computer hall.
It's very nice wallpaper, and because it's wallpaper, like it'd be cool if it actually felt like a place that you were driving through that had like variations in what you're seeing from like screen to screen, and not just level to level. But no, it's just wallpaper. There's no like, there's nothing environmental going on, and I think they really missed an opportunity to differentiate themselves, like most shmups have been able to differentiate themselves, which is in boss design, where these are just sort of like vehicles that vaguely look futuristic. And
yeah, I can
that's it.
with the boss designs, I can like picture like a Rorschach test version of each of these bosses, and they're all kind of just like these like vague, like pixelized machinery things.
Yes.
Like they do not stand out in any way to me as like, oh yeah, there's the this boss or that boss. It's all just like, oh, pieces of machinery with weak spots floating around in different ways. And you know, as far as the backgrounds, they're very pretty backgrounds, but yeah, I agree. They didn't really like tie into the progression too much. Did you guys notice also, did you ever feel like the game was like cheating in your favor?
You mean
Particularly when I play as
with your hurt box?
Yeah, yeah. Like the bullets would go right through me like all the time. And I was like, "Damn, I'm good at this game." But like, I was just like, I mean, it was just. I'm like, okay, that definitely hit me after a while. I'm noticing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you can only get hit if you get hit like square in the middle of like the cockpit or something along those lines. It feels good. It may be a little cheap at times, and again in your favor, but it feels more like a real like bullet hell, like a more modern bullet hell than what we're used to.
Yeah. Also, just before I forget, I'm watching footage of it, and I just got to the final boss, which I did not reach in the actual game, and that boss does not fall into the criticism I just had about bosses all looking the same. It's actually a pretty cool design.
Yeah, that is a really cool boss. Yeah. Rightfully so, though. You need your final boss to be cool.
Yeah, yeah.
It is also fine in a game of the NES level where like the glowing thing is what hurts. Like I'm totally. Sure. I mean, I'm fine with that even in modern games, really. Right? Like we still have tells in our enemies too of like to know like, oh, if this shines yellow, like yeah, red exactly. So I'm fine with that part. I totally agree that the rest of the game, I mean, even the enemies do change between levels, but not on a meaningful scale, and they're all shooting the same missile, which doesn't help. Like, that doesn't make it feel different enough when they're all just shooting the same kind of projectile. Where are the guys who shoot, like, I don't know, even the projectile path could be a little different, right? Like, it shoots down and then goes straight or something. I'm making stuff up. The game feels very much at times like it was just kind of thrown together because, as we mentioned, there are power-ups, but there's only 2 of them. There's this whole thing about badges, but they're just like a UI, like flare thing that just basically.
Yeah, I could never really understand what that was doing.
Yeah, so the way that works, because I think it's a little interesting, but they just didn't take it far enough, right? Is basically you start with the ensign badge. Like you can't not get this one. You just start with it, and then after you pick up 5 of the bonus items, be they power-ups or other kinds of point-based things, you're promoted, and so now your badge is lieutenant, right? And then from lieutenant to commander, and finally captain. Captain does make it so that that power-up that you get where your firepower is doubled up, that makes it like permanent. So now you can't lose that, which is a pretty cool like perk. But why not do that for all the badges? And if you need to, because it's such a short game, just lengthen out like the time between badges, so this way it's not like, you know, oh, you just automatically get like all these permanent upgrades. But I feel like the badges should mean something other than just the last badge. Like it's not even like a point based thing where you get like points for being that kind of badge. It's like a badge of honor, and it's like, who cares about, you know, like, give me a grade at the end of the level instead, right? Tell me I did S rank for percentage of accuracy on my shots when I clearly was just using auto fire the entire time, shooting into the void because enemies can only appear, in specific places for me anyway, so I might as well just continuously shoot in those directions.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have any response to that because I didn't know what they did to begin with. But that does seem silly.
Yeah, I also was not really clear on that, but it just seemed simple to me, and I was just like, I guess I'll just kind of go with whatever it gives me.
Well, the clear thing is a good point too, though, because so you're right that it's not clear like what they do, and the last one only does anything. But it's not even clear from like a coolness perspective what they were going for with the UI, right? Like instead, it's just like things that are just now on your screen. Like you can't even explain what they are unless you're looking at the manual, and then you'll be like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, but everything else is clear. It's just like, all right, you're the helicopter. You have like 4 lives. You have this many points, and then here's a cool little picture.
Right. It's like put that in the pause screen or something with my ID or something, right? Like, yeah.
Also, I didn't even think about this, but when you're playing in single player on the UI, they don't take, if you're playing as a helicopter, they don't take Jeep and the Jeep score off the screen.
I mean, maybe it's a drop in, drop out kind of thing. I don't know.
Oh, can you drop in?
I don't know. I don't know. Don't put words in my mouth.
You think you could drop it? You're saying,
don't put words in my mouth.
Drop in, drop out thing.
Maybe.
Okay,
don't put words in my mouth.
It is what Sean said.
I was trying to find an answer for that, and I can't. So I'm pretty sure you can't just drop it.
It would stand
Sean,
to reason.
You said you could drop in and drop out.
Here's the hint section for the game. You tell me if these are any useful, okay? Avoid contact with all indestructible enemies, especially the Silkworm and Venom missiles. Just say helpful or not.
I avoid contact with all enemies, even the destructible ones.
That sounds good. That sounds like a good plan, Joe. Sean, you said helpful?
Very.
Okay, here's the next one. Silkworm missiles can be avoided by the helicopter if it flies at the very bottom of the screen. This does not apply against the main enemies at the end of a wave.
That sounds helpful, but it also sounds like a cheese. It sounds like a cheese that they shouldn't be telling the player about.
It is weird that, they're telling you, like, hey, just so you know, we didn't program missiles to go to the bottom of the screen.
But incredibly helpful.
Yes, definitely helpful. But yeah, it's like saying, like, hey, there's this secret spot in the boss battle that you just can't get hit.
That's exactly what I'm talking about with the Jeep, though, too. Like, it just doesn't get hit by the missiles, and so it's like, what's the point? Like, as long as you destroy what's in front of you, you're basically just cruising.
Helpful. It's so helpful.
All right, here's another one. Try to rapidly shoot the second vehicle of the MH and C2 Snakehead before it actually forms. With a little practice, you will be rewarded with 2 bonus items instead of only 1.
That's helpful. I didn't know that.
Actually,
try to do that every time.
Out of maximum helpfulness, on a scale from not helpful at all to maximally helpful, I'd say that is incredibly helpful.
And the final hint, I have to mention this one because it does bring up another point that I didn't have on my notes here. The hint, and then I'll go on my topic from here. The helicopter is especially effective against the main enemies, which descend from the top of the screen. Simply match your descent and keep firing head to head. Are they calling the bosses the main enemies? Is that a term that was ever used in any other video game? What foreign... Did the AI write this?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe the other things on the screen aren't enemies at all. They're just like civilians trying to escape the main enemies. And you're shooting them down.
Yeah, that would explain why they're leaving.
Well, first of all, very helpful. But was there a time in the past where, like, the shorthand in video games wasn't like boss, but it was like employer, or
right,
or like direct report? Was that sort of like before we got to agree on boss?
Yeah, I think in Adventure. It was always direct report. Was
right. You think the boss is hard? Wait till you get to the president.
Ooh,
that's what we're gonna call the final boss of any game. Is the president. On the sequels and spin-off side, Silkworm was ported to many other, or not even ported necessarily. I think they originated on computers and kind of made their way over to the NES. So we're finding a lot of these lately where they're computer games that it's like, sure, the NES sold how many consoles? We'll port our game over there, no problem. Who knows assembly on the team? You're porting the version. It's like one guy gets the whole job. But this was in the notes on Wikipedia that Silkworm inspired a game called SWIV or SWIV, which is not a direct sequel, but it is another helicopter Jeep shmup, which is weird that there's two of them. But this one is a vertical shmup instead of the horizontal.
That seems weird.
Interesting.
So
yeah, that's hard to do.
I think that just makes it worse, though, right? Because the whole thing about making it cool for horizontal is that the Jeep was landlocked and the helicopter had so much real estate of the screen. Whereas now the helicopter and the Jeep share the same things, and it's just what they're able to take down, right? I imagine.
I mean, is it like how we've seen in some of those overhead shooters where it's there are things that are in the sky, even though perspective wise, it's
that's
hard
what I'm
to tell.
thinking.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that the helicopter can
interesting.
only shoot the aircraft vehicles, and the Jeep can only shoot the land vehicles.
And that could be interesting in a totally different way, then, where it's just taking away the Jeep helicopter thing. You could just have, hey, here's a game where one player can only shoot one type of enemy, and the other player can only shoot the other type of enemy.
I guess that doesn't make sense to me, though, because then you're just playing two shmups on top of each other.
Yeah, I mean, unless the other enemies can still hit you.
Yeah, I think there still needs to be some kind of synergy there.
I think there should just be all games just on top of each other, just not related to each other at all.
I'm watching the game and it doesn't matter. The helicopter can destroy tanks without pressing a different button even. So this is bad. But it's on the Amiga, so computers again
suck.
But it doesn't suck, Sean.
I don't know.
The essential games list.
Oh.
And I gotta say, I'm starting to hit my breaking point here on these computer games that just get ported over to the NES. I understand that computer games aren't inferior to the NES, and in fact, there are certain games that are on the essential games list that I said the computer version would probably be the essential one, not the NES one. So I stand by computers. I just don't stand by this idea of port it all at any cost, because I think Silkworm could have been fine in 86, maybe even 87. It's an outlier here in 1990, which is funny because it's actually part of a crew of outliers where the outliers are starting to outnumber the good stuff. And we're having a lot more skip-its lately, as predicted by a lot of our listeners who have told us that the NES just gets worse with time, and maybe Super Mario Bros. 3 was the grand finale all those episodes ago. However, I have not given up faith on the shmup genre. There are plenty of great shmups on the system. I expect plenty more. I just think at this point, what Silkworm's putting down is interesting enough to fill an episode where we mostly talk about a feature that we didn't even try, and the rest of the game is not worth talking about. So it's not essential. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that alone, as a single-player game, no chance that this is essential. It's just too basic of a shmup. We've seen too much more already, and this is going backwards in a lot of ways. Just in I don't know. It's just boring as one player. As two player, I still would not say it's essential in any way. I do think that it could be worth a play. It could be worth trying it as two player, because it's an interesting idea, and I think it could be fun. Again, this is coming from someone who didn't play it in two player. But yeah, I agree that I think the whole thing is just there's not enough going on in it. But I'll say that once Sean confirmed that there's that drop in and drop out mode, I maybe would switch it to essential. But I think even with the confirmed drop in drop out mode, not essential.
Sean.
Silkworm is essentially a game where you got two guys playing at the same time, and the way that we played it was you took one of the guys that was playing at the same time as the other guy, and you just removed him. So I would say we haven't played the game, but I've got a pretty wide enough imagination to say that I'd have a lot of fun playing this with somebody for maybe like a minute or two, and then we'd probably find something else to do. This is me presuming. We've all been doing a lot of presumptive things in this episode, and I'm done. It's not essential. Not essential.
All right. I'm glad we could get there. That's all. That's it.
Bye.
We got
That's
yeah.
the
We
episode.
no. We might as well talk about
Good night.
one other thing. Like, why is the game called Silkworm?
I don't know. Is that it's not like a military term, is it?
Well, I noticed something that you said, Mike, when you were like reading, like the hints or something. It said like when the Silkworm missiles are coming at you. Is that just saying like the missiles?
Oh,
in the
it's
game
literally
Silkworm, or, like,
there's
the
something
enemy?
called a silkworm missile. So it's
Okay.
just that.
Well, there it is.
I guess it's from
We
China.
talked about that now. So is that the end of the podcast?
I should have used this as the back of the box. The manual starts with a solution has turned into a problem.
Ooh,
That's
I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Man's
yeah,
solution.
That's concise.
Man's solution
hooked
to
me.
war, the artificial brain MHC2, has somehow overridden its programming and is turning our own weapons against us.
Wait, guys, this is supposed to happen at the beginning of the episode.
Okay, yeah, so then we'll just stop.
Let's just stop.
We'll just stop.
Oh, Joe, do the thing.
Silkworm.
Silkworm.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.
Okay.